It was a weapon the world would witness for the first time, the V-2 rocket. How did this weapon, which would spread fear across the entire world, pave the way for the beginning of the space age? How did America carry out a secret operation to smuggle a Nazi officer and accomplish the moon landing mission? You'll be shocked as you watch. Here is the V-2 rocket that changed the fate of the entire world and its incredible story. Wernher von Braun, who began dreaming about space at a very young age, was born in 1912 in a town in East Prussia, which was then part of Germany. Von Braun had an innate drive for technology. In the 1920s, work on rockets was being conducted. They were first tested on cars, then on small airplanes. Then they said, "We can do better than this." They attached the rocket to a person. They failed, of course, but they kept trying relentlessly. The book Rockets into Interplanetary Space, written by Hermann Oberth and published in 1923, described a dream. It talked about how launching rockets into space would be possible through mathematics and how it would be a beautiful dream. This caught Wernher von Braun's attention. He fell in love with ideas about space and became captivated by the cosmos. In the 1930s in Berlin, he joined an American rocket group that shared dreams similar to his. But where did this curiosity come from? The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919 at the end of World War I, had tied Germany's hands because crushing conditions were imposed on the military, territory, and economy. However, new inventions were not constrained by this treaty. The rapid advancement of technology gave rise to many new ideas, one of which was rocket technology. In 1861, Scottish minister and amateur astronomer William Leach wrote in his book, God's Glory in the Heavens, that humanity, with the help of advancing technology, could one day undertake interstellar travel. Around the same year, science fiction writer Jules Verne also published a book titled From the Earth to the Moon. In 1903, mathematician Konstantin Tsiolkovsky published a rocket equation in an aviation journal. The rocket equation explained the relationship between rocket velocity and mass. It specified how fast the gas needed to exit the propulsion system to generate sufficient thrust for lift. Robert Goddard was inspired by some people and developed his own rocket engine. In 1926, he made history by launching the first liquid-fueled rocket. Let's get to von Braun. After disarmament, Germany began to focus on new technologies. There were no restrictions on new technologies for the German army. Meanwhile, von Braun had greatly advanced his work on rockets, and his enthusiasm for it was truly dazzling. At that time, Walter Dornberger was an officer responsible for the new rocket program in the German army, and von Braun's knowledge and enthusiasm had caught his attention. In the autumn of 1932, he took him under his wing, and they began working together. 3 months later, in January 1933, Nazi Party leader Hitler became the new leader of Germany. Hitler and his close associates, aware of this new technology, were briefed about rockets. They were told that if successful, rockets could be turned into bombs capable of reaching targets very quickly. This vision appealed to Hitler, and the work had now taken on a serious tone. However, von Braun's true goal and dream had always been to build rockets capable of reaching space. But under the circumstances of the time, this dream would have to take a back seat. In 1937, the Peenemünde test site was built in northern Germany. This location was chosen for its secrecy and suitability for the planned tests. The world's first security camera was also used here. The closed-circuit monitoring system was designed by German engineer Walter Bruch at the Peenemünde launch site to observe Germany's V-2 rocket launches from a safe distance. Von Braun was hired in 1937 as the technical director for missile development at the Peenemünde test site. During World War II, he was at the head of the German rocket industry. Within a few years, the facility had turned into a factory with 12,000 workers. Primitive, solid-fuel rocket tests were being conducted at the site. Once ignited, it would fly until the fuel was depleted and then crash uncontrollably. That was it. They had to transition to a liquid fuel system, a rocket with controllable thrust. They would have to start from scratch. Von Braun had to join the Nazi Party if he wanted to achieve his dreams, and he joined the party in 1938. Later, he would be appointed as an SS officer. In this picture, the person standing in the background is von Braun, and this was the only photo taken of him in an SS uniform. In March 1939, the rocket scientists gathered in Peenemünde to test the missiles they called the V-2 Revenge weapon. The rockets to be launched were positioned at the center. The area was surrounded by high walls. The rockets were brought upright to the launch pad using a rail system. Because if a rocket falls, it meant an explosion of incredible magnitude, and no one would want to handle it. Meanwhile, Germany had attacked Poland, starting World War II. Until 1942, many tests were conducted. They were struggling to make the rocket fly upright and stable. You would never want this coming down on you. After the rocket fell, they meticulously examined where they had gone wrong. Finally, after many trials and errors, they had built a rocket that could operate stably. On October 3, 1942, the launch took place, and the missile managed to reach approximately 90 kilometers in altitude. This was the first rocket to reach space. This is a video recording from 1946. Right now, you are witnessing a historic event. Although this test recording is low resolution, it is the first image of Earth taken from space. Just as you are watching this footage, Hitler had also watched it. He was utterly fascinated. October 3, 1942, marked the beginning of a new era in transportation, the start of space travel. Hitler wanted the V-2 to be equipped with larger warheads to cause even greater destruction, but the launch he had watched was just one of the successful flights. Moreover, changing the warhead meant conducting new test flights. On top of all this, a terrifying development occurred. The British had photographed the secret V-2 rocket site. Here is the image taken by British spies. In the corner, you can see the V-2 test site. In August 1943, many facilities, including the V-2 site, were bombed heavily by the British. This disrupted all of Germany's plans, but all information related to the V-2 remained secure. An abandoned mine in Mittelwerk, deep inside Germany, could be used for V-2 production. This mine was so large that its tunnels extended up to 11 kilometers. In 1944, V-2 rockets began to be mass-produced. Initially, the production rate was 50 per month. Meanwhile, the war was turning against Germany. The Russians were advancing from the east and the British from the west. Hitler demanded that at least 800 of these rockets be produced per month. However, for the prisoners working in the mine, this level of production was impossible. As they rushed to manufacture the rockets quickly, the assembly quality suffered, and many V-2 rockets were produced with defects. Upon this, SS officers carried out a massacre in the mine, resulting in the deaths of many prisoners. The SS had zero tolerance for mistakes. If Hitler wanted it, it had to happen, even if it was impossible. In September 1944, the V-2 rockets were successfully launched at England, causing massive destruction. Some settlements were completely leveled. Within 6 months from September, more than 3,000 V-2 rockets primarily targeted London, as well as Belgium, France, and the Netherlands. The Americans were trembling at the possibility of Hitler developing a rocket capable of reaching the United States. However, Germany lost World War II and surrendered along with all its forces. As a result, the V-2 project was shelved. After the war ended, Wernher von Braun took all his plans and fled to Bavaria. He then decided to surrender to the Americans instead of the nearby Russians. He had received information that the Russians did not treat prisoners well. After the war, under a secret operation called Operation Paperclip, many workers and chief engineers from the V-2 rocket program, including Wernher von Braun, were brought to America during a stormy voyage. Von Braun, who had once worked for the Nazis, would now dedicate his efforts to the United States. He would design rockets for them, but this time, instead of being used for killing, these rockets would be developed for space travel. Von Braun and his team began testing V-2 rockets at the White Sands Missile Test Range in New Mexico. These efforts laid the foundation for the United States rocket technology. In 1957, the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik 1 into orbit sent shockwaves through the United States. In response to this development, the U.S. established NASA in 1958. In 1960, Wernher von Braun and his team were transferred to NASA. Here, von Braun developed the Saturn V, and somehow in 1969, American astronauts managed to land on the moon. America's suspicious lunar mission was finally completed. Kennedy had kept his promise. Look at fate. Wernher von Braun, a Nazi member responsible for the deaths of thousands, was hailed as a hero in America and said the following:
"Continued support. I will see you back in orbit with that new space station, and maybe one day we'll have a man on Mars. Thank you."
Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. I am Nymera. See you soon.